Okay, all right. Welcome back. I'm so sorry. We're punch drunk. It's holiday punch drunk. Okay, let's talk about the general legislative session. Let's do that. Anybody have thoughts, feelings, motions? We've already got a number of things teed up. We had our top 12 in our WPU discussion. Conversations have already been had, at least preliminarily, to try to kind of let the legislature know what we're thinking about, but we still have the opportunity to deliberate on that. We had to have them ready for the governor. So we're always excited to go up and present our priorities. We had budget numbers that came out this week that obviously are always some of the reality check. But so we have the opportunity to talk about, let's see, are we on both here? Yes, we have funding and statutory changes teed up. So Deputy Stallings, do we want to turn that one to you, Deputy Jones and Deputy Stallings, on funding and policy? Let's see where we are, and if I know we have budget separately. Do we want to talk about revenue numbers here or in the budget? It might be best here. Whatever you think. We'll just sort of. We're always adjusting to reality as reality comes into view. So that's still incomplete, but we got a little bit of a perspective yesterday or the day before. All right, Deputy Jones.
So thank you, Chair Moss. Deputy Superintendent of Operations. Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. On Tuesday, the Executive Appropriations Committee met their last meeting during the interim going into the legislative session. Typically, our process is just to give you indicators of what came out of EAC, just verbally. And then in your January meeting, we do two major lifts. We do so in the backups, I think to this item is also the governor's recommendation to the legislature. So two pieces here. There's the governor's recommendation to the legislature that came out pretty much either that same day or next day, right around this time. So a lot of things happening right around this time. What I want to assure the board is that in your January meeting is typically when we do a more extensive review of what EAC's motions were as it relates to the base budget. We already advised you or notified you that those related to basic programs were not included in the base budget. We felt that was important to action that, and we got ahead of that with Finance Committee. So when we get to your January meeting, which will be before the start of the session, we will give you all the details of what all the motions were in EAC, how much money Executive Appropriations Committee gave to the Public Education Appropriations Committee. Well, it's all broken out by how much they gave to all their subcommittees, right? Right now, the indicator is about roughly $44 million, I think they gave to them of ongoing money. And then what we do is we crosswalk what EAC provided to public education appropriations in one time and ongoing money. We crosswalk that to your request for funding, and then with your top 10, and we show you. And again, this is going to be really detailed out in January, so I'm just giving you a heads up on this, is that we do that crosswalk. We say, okay, here's how much ongoing money you have requested, you the board, your request for funding, and here's how much EAC gave public education appropriations of ongoing money. Now, earlier today, you made a motion, or you passed a motion, a recommended motion to fund your what were previously your one-time requests you sent up to, the governor's office, and then, the legislature has it as well. So right now, as it stands, my understanding is you don't have any one-time requests left. So, we'll look at that. But the intent there is by not, because EAC was just 2 days ago, if we were to pile all this data and information on you now, It would be very, because we're not seeking any actions. We're not doing that. What we'll do is we'll give you enough lead time to read through, and it's a lot of information that's coming out of EAC. Between this meeting and your January meeting, we'll give you a lot, time to, and we'll guide you along on, here's all the motions, so here's the motion sheet. They're very creative in the sense that they use Christmas colors, like red, green, yellow sheet. So you'll see those, and we'll explain to you and walk you through those between now and then especially do a deeper dive in the January meeting. From a revenue standpoint, which will also be included, which we were going to definitely share with you leading into your January meeting, is the income tax estimates, receipts are down. There are indications of, call it what you will, a recession, contracting of the economy. There's all those types of indicators. We'll get more details in that so that when the gavel drops on the first day of the session, you will be as informed as much as possible on where things stand on that first day of the session, as far as how much money has been made available to public education, what the revenue estimates are. And then typically about the first or second week in February is when final, here's what the revenue estimates are, go with these. And we keep you updated in that process too. So Dale, Dale has the thing pushed up. We can post, or I'm sorry, sir, if you want, we can display it. I think what it is just a summary of what I just talked about. No, it's not in the board backups, but you could, either way, yeah. So, and maybe I should have used the term holiday colors or something, but this is the green sheet that, they had. So there's green, red, yellow. But this sheet, and again, we're going to give this to you. We're going to send it out. Again, this was just given to us on Tuesday. So about less than 48 hours ago. So, and we'll just visually walk you through this now, but hard copies are coming and all those types of things. So we just want to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to turn my mic off, sir. If you recognize Mr. Frost, he can walk you through
Thank you, Dale. Yes.
the document.
Let's do it.
This was presented in EAC on Tuesday.
Okay. Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. Great to be with you, board members. So I was going to kind of crosswalk the available revenues, crosswalk, sorry to use that twice, compared to last year's. And it's a little confusing because the bottom line numbers take into effect what the legislature deemed high risk, and I'll get into that. But these are kind of the bottom line numbers, and this is statewide. This is income tax and general fund. To be clear, it's not just income tax fund. But after all the actions that were taken, there's about $500 million of ongoing revenue and $133 million of one-time revenue deemed available. To put that in perspective, if you look at last year's, the bottom line numbers were 422 ongoing, 800 one time. But I would point you to this line 8 that says set-asides. There was actually a lot of revenue that was deemed high risk, kind of one-time revenues, which the Office of the Legislative Fiscal Analyst suggests to the legislature that they set that aside and only spend it when it actually comes in. Because as you know, the state does not spend planned budget revenues, and we have to project budget revenues, and then they come in at the same time. So what they suggested last year was that the state set aside $2 billion one time and $1 billion of ongoing deemed high risk, and that was taken out of those bottom line numbers. If you add those back in, which I would do to kind of compare, we're talking about 133 versus 2.8 billion one time and 1.4 billion versus 500 million. So you can see that the new available revenues are down. It's not that we're negative. But the growth in and available revenues are significantly smaller this year, I think is fair to say. Is that fair, Deputy Superintendent? Hopefully that can kind of give you an idea. We'll go into more detail, but I kind of wanted to give you a sense of perspective that the state took a prudent approach. They saw that the revenues were up, but that a lot of those could be one time, and it looks like that's being the case. And so they're not having to cut, but we're not growing as much as we probably will. There will not be available revenues to grow the budget like there has been in the last few years.
If I could go red. Okay, I'm red. So with that, the point that Dell made, do you also have how much EAC made the motion to give to PEA? Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
I can
okay.
show,
Right.
um,
So now remember, we're just walking you through this here. So now we follow up, we email all this to you, right? But probably by tomorrow, latest Monday. Then we just ask you to, between now and your next meeting, review it, come to us with your questions, things like that. This has worked really well in the past. This process I'm trying to describe to you today, but maybe not doing too good of a job, is by giving you time to, if we were to take all of the documents that EAC made public on Tuesday and throw them all in the backup, that has tended to be too overwhelming. So we take this approach of, okay, let's walk you through, what we feel is the important parts. We're trying to get through quickly because we know time is of the essence here. But by doing so, it gives you a longer lead time. So when we get to your January meeting, we've given you as much. I know the holidays, Christmas, things are coming up, but we're here for you, 24/7. You call me, text me, whatever. We're going to answer your questions, okay? So when we do send all the EAC information out to you by email, please don't hesitate to review and then call us. We're building towards preparing you as much as possible, with all the information we think is out there that you would need to make informed decisions leading into and during the session. So if we could turn it back to Mr. Frost just real quickly, Dale, show them, goes to what I was saying earlier. So you have the revenue numbers on the green sheet. This is what's called the yellow sheet. And so on the yellow sheet, they take what available revenue is statewide, they being EAC, and then say, okay, each one of the subcommittees, here's how much you get. That's on, right, the yellow sheet, or maybe it's on, oh, you want to do okay, do the yellow sheet first.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Deputy Superintendent, were you going to say that we're going to show the red sheet? Was that?
Yeah.
Okay, and
sorry.
I think it makes sense to show the red first because that feeds into the yellow.
Yes.
So this shows all of the budget changes adopted by EAC. You can see lines 13 through 16 are those related to public ed, and this memo that's included in the EAC agenda goes through all of those changes in detail. But very quickly, I will point out to you that there was a net reduction in enrollment changes because we saw that enrollment's down. Then the WPU enhancement, that is an item that has to do with the inflation increase on that 2% that would pass if the constitutional amendment change is approved in the next election. But I wanted to point out that inflation right here, so that 3.8%, the WPU, they've already set aside $165,300,000 to increase the WPU value by 3.8%.
The inflationary.
That's the inflation increase in the WPU as required by law, and then a more of a technical change to the public ed economic stabilization account. So those are the four changes that they made for public ed. And then those roll into these numbers here, which are the set-asides by subcommittee. So this is kind of the bottom line numbers that PEA chairs have to work with to allocate. I don't know what else. You wanna-
And I'm red. So then this is where I'm saying this is where we'll do the crosswalk with what you've requested with what we know is available to PEA by way of the EAC motion. And that will be all prepared for you for January, but we'll build towards that with you to the fullest extent you want. As one eaches of the board members, we're going to be available to you and with you to make sure that on, you know, in your January meeting, we can do the deeper dive on this. And then subsequently, we're all on the same page about how much revenue at that point there is available and how that compares to what your requests for funding are. So, Chair, subject to any questions or concerns, I can move off of the EAC and talk a little bit more about the situation related to the mid-year updates that have occurred in one particular situation that we have.
Let's see if there are questions or comments. I have one. I was there and I was talking a little bit about this, but maybe just for broader benefit. You said the technical change to stabilization.
Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
So you mentioned on the red sheet, the technical change to economic stabilization. This is just a good example of trying to read these numbers. So
Right.
in the one-time column, you'll see a PRENS 40,900,000, right? And that's a negative. If it's in parentheses over here, you have the same amount as a positive number in ongoing. What do those numbers mean? Just for us to interpret this chart. And there's probably others if other people have questions, but stabilization fund itself is tough to figure out, but what do these numbers mean in that context? There's one negative, one positive, shifting, etc.
Chair, may I answer that question?
Please.
So they speak to it more on page 4 of that memo.
Is that memo one backed up? I think it is, right?
No.
Is that going around? Okay.
Yeah.
We
So
can
all
check.
this will be sent out to you. The challenge is that in the past usually it's just like we are now, EAC meets about 2 days before your December meeting. In the past, we have put all of the data, all the sheets with the data into the backups. But then board members feel like, well, I haven't had a chance to see these because I'm reading off the packet that was printed and, you know, made available to me a week or 10 days ago. So, and if you want to change it, you know, we can. But the process has been to do what we're doing now with you. And then when we get to your January meeting, all of this will be in the backups, but it also have been sent to you, like I said, on Friday and Monday, you know,
This
at least
Friday
by Monday.
and Monday? Okay.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so this memo with the EAC, 'cause this is
Yep.
the one they ran out of, I think, right?
It is.
When you and I were
Yep.
there?
Right.
So we ran out of, so that's going out Friday or Monday, so we can
Yes.
start.
Well,
okay.
this and the cut and the sheets,
the
all
other-
of it is
okay.
going out.
So,
And-
so
yeah.
maybe Dale, just one quick one as a highlighter, so we get this. What does that mean? Negative 40 million one time, positive number on 40 million ongoing coming out of the stabilization fund.
Yeah. We'll draw your attention to the overhead or to that because that explains it well, but go ahead, Dale. You can read it word for word if you want.
Well, yeah, I wasn't going to read it, but what statute requires is that 15% of new ongoing revenue be put into this account. And the way the accounting works on that is you're basically banking ongoing spending and reducing the one-time spending so that we can spend that ongoing spending in a downturn, if that makes sense, because you don't want to spend one-time revenues on like the WPU value increase. So that $40.9 million is basically that transfer to that account. And the way I think about it is banking ongoing spending, and it's a one-time transfer, and then that can be used in future dates.
But if it's 40 million a one-time transfer, is that usable then for ongoing items? It's just 40 million bucks, right? So you would say,
so it can
okay, I
be-
can spend $1 million for 40 years, or explain that part.
So the 40 million, so that transfer goes into this account, And that count, as long as we're not in bad economic times, and I don't know the technical definition of that, assuming we're not this year, we could spend that on one-time actions. $40 million can be spent one time. And then the ongoing spending on that is when you would have to, if there's no ongoing revenue available and we still need to cover some of these other items like the inflationary increase on the WPU or enrollment growth or those sort of things, then that takes from that ongoing capacity. So that $40 million can still be spent out of this new account. So it's not like we can't spend it this year, but we can't spend it on ongoing items. So it'd be a one-time. So the transfer's gone over to this account, and we can spend it on one-time. We, as in the state, can spend it on one-time activities. But the way the accounting looks, it looks like a negative because this is coming out of the income tax fund, not into that other fund. It's a little weird. I
Coming out of the
apologize.
income tax fund, there's a negative number in the one-time and a positive number in ongoing, but the fact is it's available for one-time spending
Out of the other account.
out of the other account.
And
Remind me the name of those accounts again?
that's the Public Education Economic Stabilization account.
Stabilization fund is where it goes into, and that can only be spent if it gets up to 11% of whatever, right? There's a formula that allows when you can start spitting that out.
That's the cap
Right.
of what can go in there. We're not at the cap. And we can spend on one-time activities, but in a downturn, then it can be used for ongoing activities.
To supplement a shortfall in ongoing spending, is that what you mean?
Correct.
You're not going to
Yes.
commit it. This is where it gets tricky, and I'm trying to clarify for myself and any other board members that have the same question. When we say we're using it for ongoing, we don't mean we're going to commit that for an ongoing purpose. We're going to use it to fill in a gap in an ongoing funding obligation because we've parked it in there for that purpose. Am I stating that correctly?
That is correct. We wouldn't spend
Okay.
it on the ongoing basis until we need it to cover these ongoing obligations that are directed by statute.
Right. If it's a shortfall, then we pull that out. Yeah, okay. Some of
And-
these, just for us
And for example, this 165 million, that's not being covered by the Public Education Stabilization account. That's coming out of the income tax fund, and it's being paid directly out of that. If the budget picture looked significantly worse, then they could be pulling out the ongoing capacity out of that fund, but they're not. We're adding to it.
Okay. I'm obviously not afraid to ask stupid questions. Anybody else have some that you're not sure about? Every year, I've got to ask 5 or 10 stupid questions, even though I thought I had it figured out last year and I've been the finance chair. So that's my level of embarrassment, but I keep asking. Remember Booth?
So, in just general terms, you showed us the figures of what we're asking for, what we want this year, and no, you showed us what we want and what we got last. This is really stupid. What I'm trying to figure out is, how does it really look in terms of what we got last year and what we are wanting this year? We've seen that the amount that is available is significantly less than it was last year. Is what we want this year significantly more than what we wanted last year? So we're going in both directions. There's much less to be had, and we want a lot more. I mean, or is it similar to our ask for last year?
So, Chair, if I may answer, Member Booth, we haven't done that crosswalk yet to show your request versus the EAC actions. And so I really can't answer that off the top of my head. I know what you've passed as your priorities, but I don't want to try to do the math in my head to answer that. And so, but we'll provide that in January.
Okay.
May. We appreciate that question. It happens to me. So we appreciate that question because I can't emphasize enough that it's really, so in the past, we've tried to, within 48 hours, put that level of detail together because, but then what ends up happening is we did it in December, but then the board would request us to do it again in January because 3 or 4 weeks have passed, and January is, 2 weeks after your meetings, typically when the legislative session opens. So the process that we've taken is to just do just a general walkthrough here, but it will be the January meeting where we do a crosswalk between what the governor requested and what you requested, and then to board member Booth's question or thing to compare how much available revenue is there compared to how much you've asked for in your request for funding. So I hope that helps.
How much did we end up asking for last year, or
we
how
can
much
do
did
that.
we get, and how much? How does that compare with what we're asking for this year? Because we know what we got last year now at this point, and
Yes.
and then by January we'll know a little bit closer of what we may be able to access this coming year, so we can
Yes.
start getting ourselves ready to
Yes, sir.
settle in.
Yep. And Chair, we can provide that level of detail in your January meeting. We just feel it's more of a value add to do it in that meeting than this one, because you're closer to the session, and we send this out to you, and you can, as much as you want between now and your January meeting, read through these things, do all that, and it doesn't, in the past, we've got feedback that it feels like staff are throwing all this at you at once. Now we're spreading it out over and being more detailed in your January meeting.
Thank you, Member Booth, and I appreciate that. I would suggest if there's to be strategic, creative thinking done, adaptive thinking, it's better to do that this month, because once we get there, PEA hits the ground running pretty quick.
do.
So I think, we know that when we set our priority list, it's going to meet, like you said in the military, every plan dissolves upon contact with the enemy. This isn't the enemy, but revenue is sort of the enemy, right? It's reality. So, we did this over the summer. And so if we're now in a position where we got to rethink stuff, be creative, it would be great to start asking those questions during this month before we get there and sort of get that detail in January. So I'm just making the invitation to folks to look at this. And I think the earlier the better. You're right. It's tough to have this detailed discussion just 2 days after. We met with the governor earlier this week. We had EAC 2 days ago. It's pretty quick. But on the other hand, January becomes sometimes a bit too late to have some of those thoughts. So maybe if we start getting it, we can think about it. So that's just my take, as we try to all put our best minds behind what we want to ask for and whether we want to bring adjustments to the January meeting. So other thoughts, questions? Okay. Like we say at the start of road trips with my family, speak now or forever hold your pee. Excuse me, but All right. Anything else? Back to you.
So tomorrow in Finance Committee, there will be a much more detailed information item related to what we call the mid-year updates. So basically, we went through the process, and kudos to the LEAs. They just, year in and year out, they just do such an excellent job of getting the data right for what we call the October 1 counts. It's really time intensive. The quality control aspect of it is solid. We have such excellent staff in our data and statistics team. So then when we get that data, when the LEAs finalize and certify their October 1 counts, the gentleman to my right, led by Mr. Uri, with help from Mr. Baker, they do the process of what's called the mid-year updates based on those October 1 enrollment counts. This year has been a unique year in the sense of one particular school district that ended a contract with an educational services provider. And in so doing, the way the current code is interpreted is that we, or you, the board, with us, your staff supporting, is that there's this term called hold harmless. And what that term or what that code was intended to do, and they're pulling. Well, yeah, you can show the code if you want. I think that was the code, wasn't it? Or no, maybe not. Okay, no, you're good. Okay, so the code says, it uses this term called beyond their control. So one of the key motions that was made in EAC yesterday was to amend the code this year, okay, which would mean that that situation that occurred would be, we cannot hold that district harmless because they're going to amend the code and make the code effective this year. So if you'll, this is the code here for reference. So I'll just pause there and, just ask that you, look at or review those terms I said beyond their control. The perception is, or, the viewpoint is that when an LEA, and not to pick on this particular one, chooses to end a contract with an educational service provider, that is within their control. And, we'll develop this further. We let Board Member Hymas know what the situation is. Tooele is in his district. Leadership knew about this. And what I mean by this is that EAC made the motion they did. You'll see that in the packet that we email you to. So the so what of this is that if we were to hold this district harmless, there isn't sufficient funding to do that. We would need 80, well, how much is it exactly?
$47 million
Yeah. Additional to 32 million? Yeah. Yeah, if you look down there, so we need about, close to 79, 80 million dollars to cover the deficit of all of the resulting or results from the mid-year updates, those counts, and hold that particular LEA harmless. So since we're not at this point going to hold that particular LEA harmless, there are sufficient balances in our funds to cover the 32 million, right? So that's going to play into this whole process too, as we go into the legislative session and the PEA process of essentially setting the public education budget. It's important for you to know this because this is, new territory, I would say. And, you need to know as the board that there's that motion that EAC made to update that particular code that we displayed to you. So I'll pause there. Well, actually, let me just, if I may, Chair, check in with Mr. Frost and see if he wants to add anything to this particular topic.
Dale?
Chair, yeah, if I may just to show what the actual motion from EAC it was, and it's here, to amend statute in the public education-based budget to clarify that prior year plus growth hold harmless, which is this statute that we're talking about that applies to the K-12 formula that affects this school district, in this case, applies to enrollment changes due to factors beyond the control of an LEA, such as natural demographic shifts or population decline, and do not apply to LEA-determined enrollment reductions, such as ending a contractual relationship, and to make that statutory change effective for the current year, funding distributions.
Member Hymas?
Thank you. I want to also thank Scott for taking some time to visit with me the other day. I've been on the phone a little bit with the Tooele County School Board chair, just talking to them. Scott, I mean, I get, 50 million, that's big, right? One of the things that Tooele is, they recognize what's happening here. They see, they just looked back in the past and thought they'd be okay. It's in their budget now, and now they're probably gathering, I don't know, maybe even today, right? Maybe yesterday, maybe the day it happened, and said, okay, we got to start thinking. They're looking at this. If it's not 50 million, how do I, as a representative, and I can't speak for the board, but how do we or what can I do to help this school district stay afloat here? I mean, I don't imagine even the largest district saying, I know you budgeted for this, but we're taking 50 million. And I understand taking 50 million doesn't sound right, but you get my point here, right? Is there a number that we can at least go back, that I can reach out to somebody at the legislative level and say, hey, 10 million, it'll be tight, but that'll help.
Right. Chair, if I may. So as Board Member Hymas has pointed out, there's been conversation. We engaged as early as we could. When I mean we, myself and the superintendent met with Superintendent Ernst and the BA from Tooele, and we said, hey, this is coming. We also asked them to do analysis to help, it is basically a help us help you, right? It's highly unlikely that they're going to see $50 million, right? But what could they do and what would they need to do that? We need to hear that from them. So first and foremost, what's the minimum? What are you doing? Shaking the couch cushions, those types of things, to come up with, well, here's what we would need in order to keep this program, to not have to end this particular support to a particular school, what have you, the minimum amount they would need. Once we have that, then, the legislative session is a budget process setting session. There could be money that becomes available once those revenue things, one time in nature. So I wouldn't say that, hey, with the code changes, that's it, do it. But really what we do need to hear is like, okay, given that you've been told that, we're not going to hold you harmless, now do the analysis of what the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth level effects of this. And, it's not funny at all. It's serious in the sense of help us help you to determine what it is we can do for you, or, depending on what you tell us you need, would really, Chair, determine how best to answer Board Member Hymas's question. Sorry, that took a long time, so I apologize.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And just for clarification, if there were an expense, it would be one time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even though they're saying, hey, we split this over 2 years, we'll say we'll give you
Right.
we'll give you a one time, and then secondly, this rule or whatever passed before the EAC, this is clear to all schools going forward. There is no mud or
No.
unclarity here. It's look, if you don't have it, you don't get paid for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, Chair, to answer Board Member Hymas' question, yes. And that's where we need to recognize our colleagues at the legislature, is that, they do want to make sure it's very clear going forward. And there is a lot of understanding and empathy for this situation. It's not that. It's just they do. By making the motion they did, it goes to exactly what Board Member Hymas is describing. Let's be very clear for decision-making purposes in the future.
Okay, thank you. Member Reel, or is that Lear?
And I was just hoping for a clarification maybe. As I'm hearing this, it seems like, some of us have opinions about the vendor that they breached the contract with, and it sounds like it was just a we're done type thing, but I won't get into that. But it seems like Tooele did that thinking, based on the statute that existed, that they'd be held harmless. And then suddenly the legislature's changing the rules of the game. Yeah. Is there any, to me, that seems like something, if I were Tooele, I'd be exploring as recourse. I don't know.
Chair, may I answer
Yes.
that question? Member Lear, you are correct about Tooele, that they're both their board, their business administrator, they were operating under statute as it's written, and that would mean that they would get the prior year funding, which they were planning on. And this issue really only came up when I was running the numbers for the mid-year update and saw these shortfalls and had to dig into it, and it unearthed the issue about this generating a shortfall. But you are correct that was the understanding for Tooele, and so, but the legislature can,
They can do
update.
that.
They
I
can
know
make
they
any
can
change
do
at any time.
But it
I
just
wish I
seems-
had had that conversation and saw that ahead of time, but I didn't foresee this.
But just seems so, I mean, I'm just venting, but it just seems so unfair to, even though it's a lot of money and maybe Twila should have been had a little more foresight or been concerned that maybe some people have friends in high places, but I'm really sympathetic to Tooele, who thought that they were covered and then suddenly they weren't. So I don't know if there's anything we can do. That's nothing more than just an expression of sympathy, and they changed the rules in the middle of the game.
I think, as I've seen it, one question is whether there are costs that were incurred in reliance on that assumption that are different than simply passing it off to the next district. And I think that's still sort of being wrestled with or considered, right? So if you thought you were going to have this and you hired 3 new teachers to handle that, and then you got stuck holding the bag, that's one thing. Whereas the pass-through money that you would distribute to the third party, now somebody else distributes it, right? That's kind of not so much a harm, but those are hard questions that I think are being wrestled with. Correct. Yeah, they lost the money that came with them, and now it goes through somebody else. And some of that is sort of, it just goes through a different pass through. Others, it does become sort of a baked in. I think those are questions that are being asked, and so yeah, I think that's the struggle I think that they've been working through. Matt.
Just one more question, Scott. And you may or may not be able to answer this. Why mid-year? Why not say, you know what, we're halfway through the year. The budget was approved. It's already been some, you know what I mean? Like why not wait until June and say, okay, the EAC is gonna take this and make it clear. It just seems like it's not a trap or anything, but it's kind of like, you know, yikes, right? So can you help me understand that a little bit? Why now? Why not wait till the end of the school calendar year, not the end of the planning year or the whatever calendar year?
Chair, if I may answer, Board Member Hymas, the main reason, so we do the mid-year update to true up to actual data now, and we do that generally so that if there are changes, and there are changes for all LEAs across the budgets, that they have as much time as they can before the end of the year to make adjustments. If we waited till the end of June and they had to make up 50 million then, it would be even harder for them. And so, yes, we could keep the allocation going, and then they might have to pay back those funds and then make bigger cuts down the line. And we took the legislative direction and implemented it so they can see this is probably the worst case scenario right now. If you have to adjust, we'll see what the legislature does. But we thought that was a better approach, that they should know, rip off the Band-Aid now rather than doing it later, was the thought process.
Let me clarify my question, and I appreciate that. If I could share, clarify my question in the sense of why have the EAC do it now? Why make the change now? Right? I get what you're saying. Like you're hurting this, and it looks like Deputy Jones Scott has the answer to this. But if we could have pushed it and then say, okay, we're making it very clear now. We're going to follow the historic pattern of what we've seen, but this is it. Instead of right, this is the last year, not we're going to do it right now in the middle of the year.
I would point to the fact that by way of the Constitution, the state has to have a balanced budget. And I know we're talking about public education here, but the timing of it, and I think Dell is alluding to this, is the reason why they did what they did is because considering all of the moving parts, the pieces, the estimates of revenue, all those types of things too, you have to make that kind of a motion and decision in the mid-year and ahead of the session so that you can properly set a budget. If you were to wait for something to go into effect after the session passed, then you risk what Mr. Frost just described. It's all about a balanced budget, what's available in revenues, and that's why from an public education perspective, we do updates based on the October 1 counts and by law to the public education distribution or thing for that too. So.
My final question, I appreciate that. My final question is, who do we need to remind that the world revolves around education? That's
Yeah.
right. That's just a
Yeah,
subtle
yes,
reminder.
sir. No, yeah. Okay.
Member Lear?
Did I miss it?
Sure.
I'm just wondering if there's, and this is me being my terrible self about money, but is there any way that there could be any kind of a loan to Tooele that we could mitigate the impossible hurdle of that much money for a single school district, and then allow them to kind of reimburse over time? Or, I mean, is that ever a possibility?
Go ahead.
I mean, we've done that with other entities, let's just point out,
Yeah.
without interest.
So I think anything, so Chair, if I may, I think anything is possible, right? I mean, we have to operate within the intent and direction of our legislature. I mean, laws are laws. I think that is certainly something we could look at. However, a lot depends on what I alluded to earlier. We really need to hear from Tooele on, okay, you know what you know, so now tell us what you can or can't do, where you can find money, where you can't, what's at stake here, right? We don't necessarily have that level of detail so that we could look at the possibility of that. Alone, though, in the amount of $50 million I don't think is feasible. Maybe, right. So it really boils down to, and I can't say enough, and I'm going to say this now, Tooele is really good and great in a lot of areas, and especially with their business administrator and their superintendent. They're going to tell us, they're going to get to, to what right is, and we're all, we all want the same thing. But we really felt it was important to make sure you all knew what was going on so that those types of alternatives can be looked at. I mean, Lark Reynolds is just outstanding. I mean, that guy, he takes care of that district, and so does that superintendent. And it's this situation is unfortunate, and it is what it is, but they will, I think if anybody can solve this, they can. So.
Okay. Vice Chair Earl.
Yeah, I just being familiar with this topic, I would say that I do think engaging with the legislators on it, right? But in the end, I think even us putting forth our best effort, the legislators are going to probably make some decisions whether or not we agree with it or not. Is that a fair statement? I'm just saying, I think that there's some discussion out there that may, as much as we're discussing here, it may still have no impact on where they decide to go. They're having their own discussions. I'm not suggesting we don't engage, because it clearly, Board Member Hymas, he's a representative of his area to try to help negotiate whatever he can't, right, to help this entity. But I think in the broader view, we may not have as much impact as, the legislature may decide, oh, this is a tight year, you know what I mean, or for whatever reason, and then make their decisions. So.
Right. And Chair, if I may, that Vice Chair Earl has added, that emphasis and even more clarity to it. So we appreciate that. You are a state board, right? So that implies that you're in the interest of the state, right? I know that all of you, each one of you represent districts within your districts, charter schools within your districts. That's part of this, the equation. I mean, Dell turned to me and said, look, based on, we agree, it's all about a balanced budget. there are just things we don't know. We don't know what the stresses are in the general fund. We don't, we don't know necessarily what's going to happen or not. What the voters will do or not with the constitutional amendment. Those, all these things play into the decision making on why they felt like they had to do that, and that being amend the code and put it into effect this year. Otherwise, it would have created we definitely have a gap here, a deficit, and so then there would have had to been a supplemental or something like that. But then I don't know where that would come from. I don't know, what that would do. Is that fair, Dale? I mean, yeah. So great point, the Vice Chair Earlman. I mean, in the end, the legislature is the code-making body. They're the ones that have to adhere to the Constitution to keep a balanced budget. So I trust the process. So.
Sorry, I don't want to.
Member Lear.
I don't want to belabor this too much, but I feel like we are a state board of education and we have anguished over charter schools closing, and what will it mean for the state? What will it mean for the students? What will it mean for that school? I would anguish no less over this school district. We don't want to see services cut to any of our students or have them close a high school. I'm exaggerating for effect. But I think it's not just Matt's responsibility, it's all of our responsibility. And I really hope we can be as creative as possible. Even if the legislature doesn't take our ideas or advice, we look for ways to help Tooele because they're our students. And I would hate to just say, oh, well, cut the budget, do what you have to do. I hope we can figure out a way to work with them to maybe work with the legislature as if all of us had Tooele in our district.
Vice
Can I
Chair Earl.
say something for dramatic effect too?
Please
I'm-
do.
No, you had a significant shift last year. Tooele was aware of that. I just think you're right. We need to be cautious and helpful of our districts, but they were aware of the shift they took. Maybe not fully aware of the consequences, and that's the part that we need to help be thoughtful about. So.
All right. Thank you. We have
And Chair,
Just chatting, yeah.
I just want to be clear. I wasn't implying that we won't do I really feel that the USBE staff has demonstrated that we are all for one and one for all too, and we're in support of your individual positions as board members, but then collectively as a board. So we will continue to develop this. Yeah. Again, though, I really feel that we really need to hear from the superintendent and the business administrator on where can we help you? Is it a loan, a combination of things? And that will be coming. I guarantee it. So I don't think I have anything else in this particular category subject to any further questions and concerns, sir. I think we could go
so
to
that,
Angie.
that's
right?
everything for board requested legislative.
Yeah,
funding?
we had no action items. We
Right.
leave it as an action item in case you want to make something,
Right.
but we are not requesting any action. We are just trying to be transparent and keep you informed on this developing situation.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And we will have the governor's budget in that backup too, right? So
Yes, we'll do all the.
two pieces dropped
Yes, sir.
this week. It was the governor's piece and the EAC on
Yep,
revenue.
it's coming, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
So, no further questions? Okay. Should we move on to statutory changes? Thank you very much. Deputy Stallings, welcome.
Good afternoon. Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. We have one policy request for your consideration today. It is another school fees related policy request. Back in 2018, 2019, when the legislature updated the code related to school fees, you may remember that they included a provision that required or I guess I should say prohibited LEAs from charging fees for textbooks, with the exception of AP and concurrent enrollment textbooks, meaning the LEAs still have the authority to continue to charge fees for AP and concurrent enrollment textbooks. One recommendation from staff is to include an allowability for LEAs to also charge for IB, or International Baccalaureate textbooks, because generally those three programs, AP, concurrent enrollment, and IB, are the fees and some of the funding from the legislature. They're generally treated very similarly, and so the recommendation is to allow LEAs to request that the legislature amend its 53G 76023A that to include International Baccalaureate as another category of textbooks that LEAs could continue to charge. And that is the policy request. It would literally be adding 2 words to the code. And that's it.
Okay. Question, discussion, motions. Sorry, Member Klein. There you go.
Okay. What was I going to ask? Oh, I just totally forgot. Hang on. Give me just a second. Go for it. Yes.
Carrie.
Deputy Stallings, do we know approximately how many students would be impacted by this?
That is a good question. Let me see. I don't believe that information is included. I don't know if Christy Schreck or Barbie Faust. I don't see any. That is something we could ask. I do not have that information readily available on IB. Oh, we have an answer en route.
Then I'll hold. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Klein.
Okay, I remembered. A couple months ago, or a few months back, we voted on removing the cap for spending from I think it was 7,000 for IB.
Oh,
And right,
Yes.
how does that connect to this? Are we removing the cap so they can spend as much as they want now on IB, but we're also having the parents pay for the textbook, even though now there's no cap?
yes. So the funding that I'm recalling now, this last legislative session, there is a pot of money that funds IB and probably AP in one, and concurrent enrollment, I believe, is a separate pot. But under the AP and IB pot of funding, previously there was a cap of $100,000. So the remaining amount went to support AP programs. The $100,000 now, with the cap off, now allows those funds to be used, I believe, to support the IB programs in general. I don't know that those funds they could be used for textbooks currently, but in the same way that those AP funds generally have been used to offset fee waivers, pay for the cost of running the program, et cetera. I don't know that they've been used to pay for textbooks. However, that is a good question. So the question is, how does that work with, the change that we made last session to remove the cap on the 100,000 to allow more of the funding that we receive from the state to go to support IB? Will this essentially, by allowing LEAs to charge fees for the textbook, is it kind of like double dipping? Or anyway, essentially, did I recap your question?
Were you asking her?
Well, I was summarizing what you said because she wasn't here.
Right.
And then I gave my answer that she may have heard, but I wanted to make sure she didn't disagree with anything I said because she knows more than I do.
It's double dipping?
No, I did not
No,
say it
okay.
was. I think that was your question is what I was trying to say.
I don't remember saying that.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But it's not double dipping.
No,
the way
it's
you-
not.
Okay. That just added more questions to me.
Christy Schreck, early college specialist at USVE. I just walked in, so if I don't understand everything, feel free to repeat the question so that I can answer it correctly. But what I understand is that you are asking about if it's double dipping. This part of the fee waiver for the textbooks is just focused on the textbooks. The money that was set aside for IB in the past legislation focuses on the program, funding the program, as well as being able to fund test fees for students that are underrepresented.
Just for students that are underrepresented. That sounds a little biased, racist. I don't know. What do you call that?
That's the law.
Special privilege, special privileges for some, but not for all. I thought, is that what equity is?
Let's see how we
I could
can.
read the code language if you'd like.
Deputy Stallings, yeah, do you want to?
Well, I can get the code citation where it references the word underrepresented so you can see what it actually says. And I believe that each LEA gets to designate. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to start saying something that I'm not sure what that looks like in their LEA. But essentially, I think what she just answered is that pot of money is what has not been used to pay for textbooks. So this would now, right? But let me
Give
find the
some
code.
kids more opportunity than others. More access.
The microphone.
Okay. So the money that is allocated for those are the low-income students, as well as the programs for the IB. There are 4 different programs for IB, so the majority of that goes to help fund those 4 IB programs.
So underrepresented means low income? Or
I
does
said
it mean others
incorrectly.
as well?
I misspoke. I meant that it is the low income.
So it says low income, not underrepresented in the code?
She's pulling that up right now.
Okay. Does this go directly to the question on the motion, or is this sort of related but not directly on?
It's the
it's a
code
related, but-
section
Okay.
that I was just going to share. So the section of
So-
code,
No, go ahead. If you got it.
the section of code is called Early College Programs. It's 53F2 408.5. It does reference eligible low-income students, and it does provide a formula to distribute money, and the money goes to support advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and this is the prioritization. And requires the LEAs or USBE, as we distribute funding, to prioritize funding to increase access to early college programs for groups of students who are underrepresented in early college programs, and cover the cost of each early college program test taken by student experiencing socioeconomic disadvantage. And when I say that the LEA, it is determined by LEA, some LEAs might have students who are underrepresented in their population. It's by percentage. So say, for example, you've got 60% of your students are one demographic and 40% are others, but yet in your early college programs, 60% of students may make up your student population, yet only 20% of the students are actually in the programs. That is it's an opportunity for the school or the LEA to encourage and increase access for all to come into those programs. Is that correct?
I have a question.
I think that's what it's saying.
Vice Chair Hart. Sorry, unless you had further to add.
So the issue at hand is about the statute is. Can you summarize that in just one sentence?
Yes. The policy request.
Oh, sorry, I have to kick myself.
The policy request, is simply to give LEAs the authority to charge fees for IB textbooks. That is all the policy request would do.
Okay, so in order to do that, you need a vote from us to either go yay or nay,
Yes,
correct?
that the board supports or directs
So,
staff to work with the
Chair,
legislature.
does that require a motion or?
Yes.
Okay,
Show
so,
the motion.
all right, well, someone make a motion then.
I'm waiting
You got the mic.
No, I just want to make sure that's where we're going.
But member Carey, did you have a question pending though?
I was told that someone was getting. Yeah, I was just told that someone was getting in as to how many students were eligible or would be impacted.
Well, the only one in Weaver County is at Ogden High.
Okay, do we want a motion? There you go. Do it.
I move that the board direct staff to work with legislators on potential amendments to the Utah Code as proposed. Oh, wait, I have to read that other one. As proposed, colon. No, I'm not done. Amend section 53G 7602 to include the International Baccalaureate Program to align the textbook requirements of early college programs.
Is there a second? Seconded. You want to speak to the motion, Chair, Vice Chair Hart?
I think that if we're going to have textbooks on, I think all textbooks should be treated equally. I just don't think there should be those exceptions. I also know those are some of the most expensive textbooks out there. I think it's important that textbooks don't cost students in any circumstance. And I don't think that students should be limited from taking a program of their choosing. We're not saying they have to be in the IB program, but if they want to take an accelerated, highly recognized program like the IB program, and they want to do that level of study, learning, and such, they should have an equal opportunity to any other student.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Member Reel, member, let's see, what's the list we got going here? Okay, Klein Reelwood.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure if, yeah, maybe you can come back to me.
Member Reel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was recently in our Standards and Assessment Committee, we reviewed the data on our advanced placement tests, and related to concurrent enrollment, advanced placement, and IB programs, our students succeeded we had incredible success rates in those courses. And I think this opens up opportunities for all of the programs to be treated equally, AP, IB, and concurrent enrollment. But I'd also just like to say publicly that I support giving underrepresented and low-income students textbooks if necessary.
Chair, if I can clarify.
Yes, please.
So currently, for the majority of textbooks, you're correct, LEAs may not charge fees for the majority. There are exceptions for AP and concurrent enrollment. And what we're asking for or recommending is that LEAs also be able to charge for IB. However, just a reminder that those 3 textbooks are still subject to fee waiver. So if a student qualifies for a fee waiver, those textbooks the charges would be waived.
In fact, can I make it we can't charge for? That's what I was getting to.
For AP and CE as well? I don't think that's on the table. Of course, I guess anything's on the table. All right. Any other? All right. Any other? Could you?
You were so passionate the first time. I was agreeing with you, and now.
Yeah, and I spoke against my own motion, so
okay.
sorry, but I thought IB was one of those
But-
that was excluded already, and I am wrong.
Member Klein, member Lear. Am I getting the right order here? Okay.
Can
Member Klein.
can somebody? I don't see the motion up there. Can you restate what your motion was? And I may amend.
She has
Are you rescinding
disowned it and cut off all financial support and changed the locks on the door from her motion. Sorry, I'm just.
Okay. Oh,
Similar.
it's on the board now.
Is it on the board now? Okay. But for the public record, I do not think textbooks should cost students money and should not be a barrier to an entry to a program. So, I speak against this motion.
But did we frame it correctly? We
Can-
got to make sure we. She is the maker. We got to make sure we know what the motion is because it is on the floor. Potential is supposed to amend. Okay, yeah, let's get that up there so we can.
No, I'm going to do it. I already said.
What are we waiting on? No, that's, I don't, if the program. Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and.
If the program.
Well, there's some.
Okay.
Okay.
But I thought we were waiting for a number from.
No,
Okay,
we're
but
not.
that's.
We're not.
They can't find
Did you figure out what I did?
AP courses.
Well, I know what you did.
Chair Moss, member Hyman,
But our problem is.
Mem-
But that problem is.
Okay, member Lear and then member Hymus.
Do we want?
We are at T minus 45. So, member Lear.
I know. This is a hard one. I agree. I don't like charging for textbooks either, but I also feel like that IB programs are at least as valuable and credible as concurrent enrollment and AP, for which schools are allowed to charge for the textbooks. And that supports the program. Instead of getting enough taxes, we charge the parents through we put a head tax on these students. So, yes, it costs students to be in these classes, but there is a very real fee waiver opportunity, and sometimes there are, as I understand it, there are additional ways through IB, through AP, I don't know as much about concurrent, to give subsidies to students who even miss the fee waiver threshold, but they can't, it would be hard for their family to support the textbooks. So I think that having these programs in place is so crucial for a certain group of students that I feel like we have to support this and then look for ways to subsidize the textbooks so that as many children as possible are not paying for them, even at the above fee waiver threshold. So I would support this, absolutely. And then let's get creative and find a way to cover these costs that doesn't hurt students and parents.
Member Hymus?
I'm wondering if we're going to go this other direction, if this is because this is going to be, if we were just talking about saying, hey, we want to now charge for IB books along with the others, and now we're saying, well, we don't want to charge for any, that's quite a bit of money, isn't it? Do we need to, and I know in light of, I know, but if we're heading that direction, and I don't want to kick the can further down the road as well, but we really don't have a lot of information to go off of other than, yeah, we don't want any kids to pay for this, but that money's got to come from somewhere. So I guess what my question is, directed to the chair is: do we need to pause on this and get more information if we're going to head in the direction of not charging for any of the 3 books, or are we going to move forward and say, yeah, we're going to include the IB textbooks with the CE and the AP, and we still have fee waivers that we can still take advantage of, right? So I guess my concern is we're looking at 2 different directions here. I don't know which direction we're going, but I think we can argue it for the next 43 minutes. I just would love to have a direction so that we can get somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think we have a live motion to eliminate the ability to charge for AP and concurrent enrollment. And so if somebody made that would expose a significant funding challenge, right? Whereas the motion that's pending would allow them to charge for IB like they do AP and concurrent enrollment. We can see where that goes, but there's that one I think doesn't suggest a funding problem. It allows that to be. So if that were to fail and a motion went the opposite direction, that's probably a broader discussion in terms of filling the gap. But we don't have that on the floor.
I guess I'm just speaking to Member Hart's, speaking to her motion that she doesn't want to go through.
No, well,
if she doesn't, if the motion doesn't go through, if it fails, then we just leave it as is, which means you're still allowed to charge for AP and CE, just not IB, right? So
right.
what's your
In all fairness, the motion belongs to the body now. It's been made. I just did y'all a public service making it. I feel obviously different than the legislature made and has made gestures in the direction of making school free. They have talked for several years now about removing fees. To go in the opposite direction seems to be a little tone deaf. At some point, the state of Utah as a whole is going to have to come to terms with to live within our means, which means we don't offer programs that we can't afford. And if we want those programs, we make arrangements for those programs to be available publicly, which means everyone. So I'm not in favor of adding something because it feels like going in reverse. And I understand the argument. I just reject the philosophy. I realize it's a means to an end because, we have fee waivers, but our ultimate goal is to make public education free. And in Utah, a variety of types of public education. So I feel like this is moving in the wrong direction. I understand the challenge. I was part of an IB school. I understand the costs. I still think you live within your means and you figure out how to pay for it. You don't say to families, we have public education and these are the opportunities. And if you have money, you need to pay. And if you don't have money, you don't need to pay. That doesn't feel like we're going in the direction that we need to go in. Although it's a means to an end, it's not a good solution.
Okay, Member Carey?
Chair, I had requested information on the total number of IB students, and it's my understanding that now may be, we may have that number now.
Great. Can we put it back over to you?
Yes, thank you. The total number of students that are taking these courses at the high schools is 3,820.
Okay. Did you have follow-up comment or question? Okay. All right, 3,820. So we have a motion then on the floor, disowned as it might be, that the board directs staff to work with legislators on potential amendments to section 53G-7-602 to include the International Baccalaureate Program to align the textbook requirements of early college programs. Seeing no other lights, I'll just ask one question. Is there some estimation or anticipation that allowing to charge for these textbooks with a fee waiver for those that are low income will expand the program offering? Is this part of the calculation, or is it just an alignment question with other similar programs? Oh,
Thank you. It's basically an alignment program to align with all the other early college programs.
we don't know then whether allowing them to charge for the books will result or expand. It's not part of the motivation or calculation of then. Okay.
That was not.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. All right. I think any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. Oh, sorry, Member Klein.
It's okay. I just had one more question, kind of back to my other line of thinking. So if under the normal fee waiver process, economically disadvantaged students can get IB textbooks, then the underrepresented populations language in the code applies only to those of specific ethnicities or race?
Goodness. It can also be maybe one course has a higher percentage of women than men. It's not always just ethnicity. It's representation of all demographics.
So regardless of their economic status, they could get financial help.
Christy, you could probably speak to this. A lot of this actually came from the board many years ago when there was a study done about student participation and access to early college courses. And they found that there were certain groups of students who, although they may have made up a certain percentage of the student population at the school, for some reason, they were not being encouraged to enroll in early college coursework. And so it's not always the same for every LEA. Like some LEAs may be very representative. There might be some courses where you see less women or men, or you might see less students of a certain ethnicity. And the idea was to open the doors for all students, to make it access available to all. That was my understanding. And the reason why they said underrepresented is because a student population at one school might be underrepresented, but that same student with the same demographics at another school or LEA may not have the same barriers. So it's really about encouraging and opening the doors to all students.
Okay, follow up.
The motion, we just got to get to a vote.
It just sounds to me like it's not based on what students want to go in, but us trying to kind of set up a quota system by funding some groups of students and not others based on their disproportionate representational numbers in a particular program. So if we want, which doesn't sound like barriers, it sounds like us trying to kind of steer kids into certain things in order for us to say, look, we have equal representation in all these different groups. Is that right?
I wouldn't say that, but I'm not also.
But that's what I'm hearing, because if all students can participate, there are no barriers. It's just they maybe don't want to, and so they're not choosing it. And so the only way we can get them to do that is to steer them, which is different than having lack of access. Everybody has access. They just may not choose it, and we are trying to manipulate their choices, is what I'm hearing, and
All right.
I think that's highly problematic.
Any further final questions? If not, let's vote. I think the vote is open and live. The motion is, I think we've already read it enough times, to align the textbook requirements of early college programs. So, board members, please vote. We are, that's everybody? One more. We got 14.
There you go. You wait till the end, see what happens.
Okay, that motion passes 8-4 with one abstention. The no votes being Vice Chair Earl, Member Carey, Vice Chair Hart, Member Green, and Member Klein abstaining. Oops. Wait, what? Oh, you're right. 8-5. No votes being Vice Chair Earl, Member Carey, Vice Chair Hart, Member Green, and Member Wood, with Member Klein abstaining. Okay, that's the. I have one question. Let's see, on the matter of, and then Member Klein as well. Potential policy changes. So we had a question that came up a while ago out of UASBO. The question was whether to propose change to statute to somehow facilitate reentry into the teaching profession for retired individuals where there's currently a statutory bar and potentially a funding question for retirement programs about coming back in. And we were asked to explore that. I'm curious. I have not heard of any legislative action on that front. Is anybody else aware of that? You are aware of it, or? But not for teachers or educator. Okay. So my question, and I don't have anything concrete enough to maybe propose, but just to throw out, I know, we're talking every which way we can about our teacher shortage and retention, encouragement, recruitment, et cetera. There at least seems to be, from what we've heard, some number of teachers who would like to reenter, but they have a statutory bar. Could we just really quickly kind of get the lay of the land on that and see whether it's something we want to propose that staff work on for a potential recommendation? Vice Chair Hart, were you trying to speak to that?
Well, yeah. So our own USBE staff could really use, the wisdom of experienced teachers. I'm wondering if it requires a motion to ask our staff to research the issue and bring us some ideas. I don't know if that requires a motion or if we need to vote on that, or if people are opposed. I guess we would want to put it into a motion to make sure the whole board wants to do that. So you want me to just? On what issue? On teachers returning after retirement.
Could you maybe just 30-second about what the current barrier is to that, so that we frame the issue and maybe come back with some research? Yeah. So how does that work, Angie or Deputy Stallings? Sorry.
Mute me. There we go.
Oh,
I will. There we go. No, I'm good now. I'm just pulling up the JLC priorities right now, because I did want to also share that this policy change would trigger a fiscal impact. So it is also a funding request. So it's titled retiree reemployment. The associated funding request is $42 million, which would allocate $42 million and allow retired educators. Now this one actually includes more than just educators. So it's state employees, firefighters, and public safety officers the opportunity to immediately return to work upon retiring without penalty. So that is the policy request they're pursuing. And I can't remember, Scott, do you remember if it was like 16 million just for education? It's around, this is just me approximate, so it could be a little bit higher, a little bit lower than 16 million, but of the 42, about 16 million of that would be the impact that would be education or educators. The rest, other state employees, firefighters, and public safety officers would make up the remaining 42 million. And I believe that JLC leaders have been working with legislators on this, and many of those legislators that are leaders in the area of retirement want to address this as a whole for many, not just educators. And so that's why you see the 42 million. So the reason why I wanted to share that, Chair Moss, is we could bring more information on that. But in this case, it wouldn't be just a policy request. It's also is aligned with a funding request. So the question would be then if you would want to add it to your funding priorities and then prioritize it.
Follow-up question. Is there an exploration of whether that funding need is automatic and necessary? I understood somebody at UASBO was saying there's money involved because once you come back, you then get back in line for benefits, et cetera. His thought was, I don't want the benefits again. I retired. I'll come back without the benefits. Just let me come back. That cuts the fiscal impact and brings teachers back. Is that something worth exploring? Sorry? That's why I was Exactly. So by options, that's, I guess, what I had in mind. Is there a lower funding tag option that just allows them to, and I don't know if JLC is pursuing that, but maybe we should if they're not. So I think that's maybe what we're just talking about, putting in the hopper for research and coming back. Is that okay? Do we need a vote for that, or is that something you just take a look at? We can vote when we bring it back and see if we like it. Okay. Okay.
In addition, as you're looking, I had heard about this a while ago, and I heard the resistance was coming from URS, and I think from what I've heard, it's not necessarily real money, but it's just that they are so conservative that it's making it hard to break out of that mindset. So maybe in exploring this, you'll explore if URS is going to fight us to the death. Let's not waste our time.
Unless it's worth it, then let's. Then I know, I hear you. There's a cost of, yeah, but I mean, we're trying to be creative and get teachers in the classroom, right? So if we can work creatively on that, maybe we can. I'm also curious, and Scott knows this, about base funding and where that stands, and whether we need to bring back a small district and charter base funding request. We didn't do that, so that's just something that maybe might be brought up in January, but I'm not asking for action. It's just something floating around out there. We're still in a situation where the solution hasn't been found for economies of scale. It's still kicking around, so that might be something that I might want to raise for discussion. I'm just putting a heads up out there. Anybody else? I didn't want to monopolize. Member Bogus and Klein.
So, Chair, my question would be, I believe, for Superintendent Jones, but is there somewhere a grid or something, or could we create something to help us better understand the impact at different levels? Because the fiscal impact can be great. Questions that immediately came to my mind that I hear as arguments often are double dipping. That's the big one that I hear often. And so I'm wondering if there's somewhere just a grid that, like Chair Moss said, benefits with and without. Is there a double dipping element that we need to be concerned about? All of those things. And I'm not asking necessarily for the information, but if there's something there, or can we create something to help us better understand that? Thank you.
Chair, as part of the process that, I believe we've been directed to do, the answer is yes, we can create. There are some useful resources out there that we'll look to combine to try to address all the different, what I would say are scenarios, right? If this, then this. If you take this group out, then this. Tier 1, Tier 2, all those types of things, we can try to get all in there, so.
Sorry, yes.
Wasn't this a bill in the last legislative cycle too? Didn't somebody already try this last year? I thought Representative Birkeland did too.
Yeah, okay.
But there's been a dialogue started. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
5 or 7.
Okay, well, let's bring it up. Okay, let's see, Member Klein?
Yes, I would just like to make a motion that under the statutory request previously the previous recommendations, that we rescind number 12.
What's number 12? You're talking about
Trying
on
to-
our legislative funding priorities to
On the
rescind-
statutory requests. Sorry, I thought I had it open here. Let me get there, and I'll read it to you. So, number 12 says, ooh, my computer just,
Does anybody else not have internet?
yeah, it's kind of wigging out. Oh, here we go. Number 12 reads, amend section 53G 10-205 to be consistent with the provisions of section 53G 6801 and 53G 6803, including renumbering 53G 10-205 to be moved into Title 53G Chapter 6, Part 8, Parental Rights. So if I have a second, then I can speak to it.
Is there a second? Second by Member Bogus. You want to speak to the motion?
Okay, so this has to do with like R277700 that was just amended on the constitutional rights of students and parents to refrain from participating from any aspect of school that violates their religious belief or right of conscience. And so this was put forward by Member Wood in a previous meeting, and then after more dialogue, greater understanding was gained, and maybe she would like to speak to this as well. But I heard her speak at the Education Interim Committee, saying that she had changed her thoughts on this, and so I would just move that we rescind.
Okay, discussion of that motion. Member Wood? Oh, we need a
She
second.
seconded it.
Oh, you did.
Bacchus did.
Member Wood?
I did gain greater understanding as to why it is located where it is. I am still wanting there to be some connection to parents. I'm a pretty involved parent and did not understand that 205 existed. And so to me, this has always been about how do we let parents know that these options are available. So I'd like to make a substitute motion. This is
It's in order.
This is under that I would recommend that to the legislature that they amend 53. Oh, sorry. I lost my section here. 53G-6-802. I don't know if anyone's taking this down, sorry. Yep. That's it. Yes. Oh, well, it's a substitute motion. Recommend to the legislature to amend um, 53G-6-802. Yes, to add in notification as to rights found in 53G-10-205. Mm-hmm.
Do you want the section of code to notify, for the LEAs to be required to notify, or do you want there to be a citation in that section or a cross-reference to the other?
So the wording I had, and you can tell me if this is appropriate, right? It says an LEA shall annually notify a parent of a student's enrolled in the LEA of the parent's rights as specified in this part and 53G-10-205.
Okay, thank you.
So
It
it's
is a
just adding the
notification.
lines and 53G-10-205.
Yeah, for LEAs to notify parents. Okay. Just one moment. In which two sections again? I apologize.
It's just in this part is what the current statute states.
Okay.
In this part,
Uh-huh.
and then adding in 53G-10-205.
Okay.
That way there's nothing moved. It's just refers them back so that when parents are in the parents' rights section, they are also aware of their constitutional rights of their students and their rights as a parent to allow their student to do it.
And would this be in lieu of current number 12?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that the word amend. Sorry. Or substitute, actually. No, sorry, I'm almost done, I promise, sorry to read. This is why it's nice when I have a heads up. Before then I don't take the
Sorry,
time.
I didn't have a heads
apologize.
up. So.
I know. Then you have to stop. I apologize, that's all. Okay, does that work, Board Member Wood? Yeah, it changed, the men changed to read. Let me see how it we wrote it. It's amend section, da 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 da. So I'm just trying to get the right voice. Wow. There we go. Because right now it starts out amend. And so now I'm just saying that the board amend the board's number 12 request for statutory change to read. And this is what number 12 would be amended to. What is in the quotations? Or substitute. I could use substitute up above. Either way. Yeah. Text or email? Oh, do you have either?
So can we put, I mean, because that's the language that I want. I don't want it bigger or broader. I just want that. I mean, basically it's adding in section 1, the 2 words and 53G. Does that clarify that's all we're adding is and?
I'd have to read, I apologize, I have not read 802. I don't have it memorized right now. Would you like me to take a look really quickly?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it says.
It could just say add 2 words in, and then we could put subsection,
Yeah.
But I think in general, I'm getting what you're looking for.
Okay, yeah, no big description. It's just basically whatever they're already doing, add in that code.
Gotcha. Do you want me to rewrite it but now that you've explained it that way, Board Member Wood?
One more. Leanne,
Yeah.
will you, when you say they, you mean LEAs? So they're just adding that extra whatever, when you say whatever they,
Yeah.
Yeah, so so the code also states, so that's one, says the LEAs shall annually notify parents of the rights in this section.
And then you just want
And
to
I want it to put
include,
and 53G-2105. And number two, in the code, it states that a notification online is sufficient. And so I don't want to, none of that
so
changes.
you're saying you don't want the LEAs to change their website or their, however they're doing it, you just
Nope,
want to
just say-
add this portion
Yep.
to there.
So, I mean, it
Thank you,
might
Chair.
be.
Sorry, it's more informal, but
Sorry, it's easier.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Sure, yeah. And then we can open it
Say to amend that section of code to add a requirement for LEAs to notify parents of the rights described in section 53G10-205 in addition to quote unquote this part. So I think that what I'm now showing there is that you're wanting to just add section 53G10-205 in addition to what's already there, which is this part. Does that work?
Yes, 2 words. Or 1 word and 1 code reference.
Excuse me. Is that teed up correctly? And did we have a second? I don't think we did because we didn't have it teed up, right? Okay, it's been seconded. Does that look right, Member Wood? So this is a substitute motion. Would you like to speak to it further? Okay. All right. Member Klein and Member Bogus.
So I appreciate what she's trying to do here, but I am opposed to tying the 2 sections together because the one is the parental rights section and the other is constitutional rights. And those are, while maybe they may be similar, they're different. And if we reference the 53G10-205 in the parental rights code, or section of code, then when districts will interpret it through the parental rights code, and many parts of the parental rights code are not actually about parental rights, but is about regulating parents and their rights, and sometimes, and in some cases, could be seen as abridging their constitutional rights. And so the 2 really should be standalone and not connected so that the one doesn't get interpreted through the lens of the other and vice versa. So I would be opposed to connecting these 2, although I would be, and I don't think it requires legislation to have parents notified. I think it would be great to have parents notified of either or section or both, but not in relation to each other. And I think that can be done without legislation. I think as a board, we can easily do something to that effect and require LEAs to send something out each year without it having to be in code.
Member Bogus? Okay.
I would just ask that we amend section, Superintendent Stallings has it. And I would like to put quotations around the words constitutional protections in 53G-10-205. So that.
Let me just make, go ahead.
And with a second, I would like to speak to the motion. Superintendent Stallings, do you understand that?
Let me just make sure we're in order here. I've lost track of the sequence. We had
I'm
a
just
substitute
amending the
motion
substitute
for,
motion.
so we had a motion, is it a motion, a substitute, and then the motion to amend? Is that where we are?
Yeah, that's where we're at.
All right, so we're good. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So the language I sent you, Superintendent Stallings, I just would like to put, yes, ma'am. I would just like to put quotations around the words constitutional protections in section 53G-10-205. Yes. So it would have 2 extra sets of quotations. And if I'm moving too fast, then I apologize, ma'am. So the quoted language would be, yes, exactly, like, not necessarily constitutional protections, but before the word constitutional and another set of quotations after 205. So that's the language that we would like to add to the code, so that it calls out that 205 is a constitutional protection as opposed to the original language. And I'm sorry I did not put that in there. That is my fault, ma'am. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Yep. No.
Isn't that right? Because it's this part and constitutional protections. You don't want that.
So no, like,
It should be a separate line item.
what I sent you, it would be like, I think the code,
here.
I just had it pulled up.
It's right here.
So it'd be number, so it would be a new number 2. So it'd be an LEA in this part. The constitutional protections would be the number 2. And then the 3 would be an LEA satisfies the notification.
The 2 becomes 3.
Did I articulate that in a manner that caused me to be viewed as clear?
Do you have it in front of you, the code?
I'm just trying to do it in context. Would you like to go to the reports and requirements task force, report out and come back to this so I can draft it? I don't know.
Well, we only got 5 minutes. I think we can hold that one till
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I would accept that without objection if that we would
Yeah.
need 2 votes.
The friendly, this would be friendly? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any objection from the body? Not, that will be a friendly. Okay. Yes, Member Lear.
If all important quotation marks will not be in the code. They may be the message we send, but not in the code. They don't put quotation marks around important things in the code.
No, but the language is what I would like to shift out.
Sure, but I guess I don't see what matters.
You just don't want them, wouldn't want them rephrasing it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You want that exactly.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I apologize. Your mic is not on, but I'm happy to listen.
So the subsection 1 says an LEA shall annually notify a parent of a student enrolled in the LEA of the parent's rights as specified in this part. So then we would be adding a new number 2. And number 2, the way you sent me the language I have is constitutional protections. But is what you may want it to be an LEA shall annually notify a parent of a student enrolled in the LEA of, and then we make a little a, the parent's rights as specified in this part, semicolon, and the constitutional protections in 53, blah, blah, blah. Is that how you want it to read?
Ma'am, if that's how it reads, that would be fine with me.
Okay, so it would be essentially.
Assuming that is
a new-
amenable to Member Wood as well. I just want them to be on two separate lines so that the constitutional protection is not conflated with a parental right. That would be my goal. Is that the same?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yes. So,
Member Straight.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your work on this,
yes.
Superintendent Stallings.
You're great. I just feel, I'm so sorry I'm so slow.
So it talks about the notification of parents. Is it clearly defined what notification means? What is that? Oh, please. If that's okay.
Yeah. Number 3 in the code, which will be number 3 if this passes. It's number 2 right now. And LEA satisfies the notification requirement described in subsection 1 by posting the information on the LEA's website or through other means of electronic communication.
Okay, that's pretty simple then. So it's not a letter, it's not an email, it's posted on the website.
Right. So that would have to include 1 and 2 in it instead of just 1 as it's currently written.
So Board
in
Member
the code.
Klein, does it also list outside of right of conscience what those constitutional rights are?
It's 2 lines. The whole code is 2 lines.
Okay.
And it doesn't list anything right now. So.
Thank you.
All right, further discussion to that motion. Seeing none, we have a motion to amend, that the motion be amended to read that the board amend statutory requirement number 12 to read, amend section 53G 6802 to renumber a portion of, sorry, Angie,
A, the parents' rights as specified in this part, and then B, the constitutional protections in section 53G 10205. And if that works, then I think that this motion here will do that. And that is what I would work on with a legislator to do what you see in context. Is that correct? Yes. Then you don't have to renumber anything in subsection 2 because subsection 2 refers to subsection 1. You only have to amend that one part of subsection 1.
So this was seconded and accepted as a friendly, right? So, yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if we went beyond that earlier one. So this is effectively Member Wood's substitute motion, now framed as Member Bogus's friendly amendment. Motion be amended to read as follows, that the board amend statutory requirement 12 to read amend section 53G 6802 to renumber a portion of subsection 1 and add new section 1B as follows. To include 1B, constitutional protections in section 53G 10-205, which would then look like the language below. So if there are no other lights, let's vote. Voting is open. Two more. There we go. That passes 13 to, well, it has to be until tomorrow. 13 to 1, one no vote, being Member Klein. And that was a substitute motion, so I think that clears the board. That is our final motion on that. So it is 6 o'clock. We've got,
Have a motion to postpone till tomorrow.
okay, go for it, Vice Chair Earl.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to postpone the rest of our agenda to tomorrow afternoon. We've cited it on the agenda tomorrow, so did I do that correctly? Michelle? Okay. Do I have a second?
I will second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, let's do a roll call, or tee it up.
What do you want to do?
Should we tee it up for the, we got, okay. Let's tee it up for a regular vote then. Can we put this up for the system?
I know they haven't.
Huh? As there were some no votes, I want to make sure we had it recorded. So it's open. The motion is to postpone the remaining items till tomorrow afternoon session. Yeah. We've got consent and some reports and requirements recommendations. The budget report. I think we have the holiday party teed up and waiting, don't we? Huh? All right. Oh, look at this. Oh, we are not going anywhere. Okay, then. This fails 6 to 8. So the yeses being Hymas, Booth, Moss, Lear, Earl, and Carey. And so we 6 are going to go eat. Y'all have fun. Yeah,